Greetings, everyone. Today, I want to welcome Patti Mason to the Mom, Chief of Everything podcast. Patti is also known as Pepperspray Patti because of her expertise in self-defense. Patti, can you take a couple of minutes to share a bit about yourself and your story, about how or why you are so passionate about self-defense?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share this information. And it's funny that you say the expert in self-defense. Well, the reality is that I'm doing this because there was a moment in my life where I didn't know what I did. And that's one of the biggest things that I remind people when they're considering taking a self-defense class. You don't know what you don't know. And I was attacked. It was in my house, and it was by my husband at the time. And I had always been the kind of person who said, well, of course, if anything ever happened to me, I would fight back. I would defend myself. I would never let anybody, hurt me or take me or hit me or anything like that. That attitude is great, except I didn't have the next step, which is the answer to, well, what exactly are you going to do? I had never hit another person. I had never been in any kind of a situation like that. So it turns out that I really didn't know what to do. And that's what catapulted me into learning self-defense and all the different aspects of it. First and foremost, just to keep myself safe and never let that situation happen again. And when I got to a point that I was happy and healthy and had moved on, I thought, what better way to give my experience a purpose bigger than me than to pass on that information and share it and empower other women and teens.
Wow, it's such an amazing story. And I know that you have just been through it. And so many women have been through it and they don't really know where to start. Maybe similarly to you. And I know that when we've talked in the past, you've talked a lot about self-confidence and belief in yourself as part of the self-defense, mantra, so to speak. Can you expand a little bit on that? And as well as the role of positive affirmations and giving specific feedback if you're trying to either teach another woman in your class or if moms want to help empower their daughters. And this isn't exclusive to women. Obviously, men and boys can also have to rely on self-defense. But what can a mom do for their child to protect them and to just empower them with self-confidence and belief in themselves? And if a mom has experienced this herself, or a woman who has experienced this themselves, what would you recommend as starting to build that confidence and belief in themselves?
Great question. So I'm going to start with the last one because it kind of goes back to what you had said after my intro. If you have had an experience in any kind of anything that made you feel threatened, uncomfortable, not safe, if you had an experience with an assault or an abduction or anything, the very first place that you start is with hope. And that means just know, just trust me, just believe that there is hope, because that's the first feeling that you have after an experience. And it's probably the hardest one to let go of is, and I know for myself, that was through my experience. And when I left my now ex-husband, I spent about 1.5 years before I actually started self-defense. And that whole 1.5 years, I lived in fear. And I remember constantly the thought, am I ever going to be able to move on? Am I ever going to get away from this? Will he ever not have power over me? will he ever not have control messing with my head, that manipulation and all that stuff? So hope is the biggest thing that I can say. There is hope. I have heard so many stories and experiences of women who have been able to overcome. And so just know that there is hope. That's where you start, is believing that there's hope. Now, in regard to why self-confidence and belief is so important in self-defense and in life in general, one of my very first classes, and right now is my 4-year anniversary. This is like my anniversary week. It's officially 4 years since I created Pepperspray Patti. And
Great.
thank you. I'm so excited. And one of my very first classes, I was all pumped. It was an hour class. I filled it with as much tips as I possibly could and empowering these ladies. And one woman raised her hand and said, so if I'm in the kitchen and, you know, I'm chopping vegetables for dinner and someone breaks into my house and I have that knife in my hand, I don't know if I can use it against another person. I don't know if I'm able to do that. And that clicked in my head, and that's where that was a huge reminder for me of how important self-confidence and belief in is. Because if you don't believe you can do something, odds are you're not going to do it. In a situation like that where it's life or death, fear is flooding through your body in addition to adrenaline, if that is where confidence comes in. That's what helps you to get over that fear and be able to react and do something. So I tell people, if you're not confident with a knife, don't use a knife. If you're not confident with a particular physical defense move or something like that, then don't do it, or practice until you are. One of the exercises that we do in my classes is called the power of your voice. And we start out just in your normal speaking voice, and you tell me to stop. You decide how close you're going to let me get to you before you tell me to stop. And then you have to tell me with 100% belief to stop. You have to not only convince me, but you have to believe it too. And if I think that you believe it, then I'll stop. If I don't think that you believe it, I'll keep coming, because I want you to really grasp how important it is to start inside in that belief. And sometimes I will even start a self-defense class with writing I am statements. We take a blank piece of paper and I tell them, just write I am at the top, and then take a minute to write every positive word you would use to describe yourself, or that other people would use to describe yourself. And I do this with all ages of classes, especially the preteens and the teens. This is so much more important, that confidence, because again, you have to believe in yourself. If you don't believe that you're worthy, if you don't believe that you're enough, if you don't have confidence and belief in yourself, or you don't think that anyone cares about you, you don't believe that there's anyone that you matter to, you're not going to fight back. And that's the bottom line of it. That is why confidence building and positive affirmations and assertiveness skills is probably about 50 to 60% of my class.
Wow, that's really powerful, because the hope aspect, the power of the voice, is so important for us to be able to speak up and say what we mean and mean what we say. And along those same lines, we've also, you and I have chatted before this as we were just kind of talking about what we wanted to talk about today. And you mentioned identifying boundaries and speaking up with those boundaries. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about identifying someone's boundaries, being confident in those boundaries, and knowing that ahead of time before a situation actually occurs?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Boundaries. This is another big chunk, because we, particularly as women, I don't know how it started or where it comes from, but our society is really good at making us think that we don't have a voice, that we don't have the rights to always be confident and comfortable. And this goes back to another story that someone shared in one of my classes. She was an older woman, and she was leaving the grocery store, walking to her car, got her car, opened up the trunk, and started to put the groceries into the trunk. And a man came up and said, "Can I help you? Can I help you with that?" She said, "No, that's okay, thank you." And he says, "Oh, no, that's okay. I don't mind." And he started to put the bags into the trunk. Now, in his mind, he was doing a good deed. He was helping somebody out. And he probably went home feeling good. Hey, I helped somebody today. I did my good deed for the day. What that person doesn't realize is that woman who had told him no, that she didn't want him to help, when he ignored that boundary that she had set and he went ahead and did what he wanted to do anyways, first of all, that's disrespectful. Regardless of your intentions, it's disrespectful because she said no. The second thing is, what he doesn't know is that she stood there the entire time in fear, scared, because she didn't know if she was going to be the next thing that got put into the trunk. Did you really do a good deed? We don't take boundaries seriously. Another example that I use in class is I'll walk up to someone and I'll touch their shoulder and I'll give them a compliment. And I'll ask them, "Was me touching you okay?" Because with some people, it is okay, but other people, it's not. But how many people have somebody say something or do something to them that they're not okay with and they don't say it? Speak up, say something. And don't worry about being rude or disrespectful to them. You can simply say, "Thank you, but I would appreciate if you don't touch me." And then it gives you the opportunity to see how the person reacts. Do they go, "Oh, I'm so sorry"? Because that's what a normal, respectful person does when another person puts a boundary out there. Now, some red flag behaviors to watch out for is someone who says, for example, "Oh, I am so sorry. See, I just can't help it. I'm a touchy-feely kind of person, and I just love hugging on someone." And then maybe they even go and touch you again. Even though that may not seem like that's a harmful person, again, it goes back to that respect. They didn't respect your boundaries. They had an explanation. They have excuses. That's something I would be aware of that person and be like, okay, well, and I would keep my distance from them. Maybe they get offensive. Well, what's the problem? It's not like I hurt you or hit you. Do they get defensive with their answer? Again, that's a warning sign to you. Why is this person getting defensive when I told them how I feel and what I'm not okay with? This is especially important for kids because we talk, when it comes to abductions, rape, the statistics are ugly. And especially when it comes to sexual assault for children, it's horrendous. And you get into these, the older they get, it doesn't get any better. Kids and sexual assault, college age girls and sexual assault. It's huge. And why? Because we're not told to be confident and set clear boundaries. I have had an opportunity to work with a lot of colleges and universities, and particularly with young women who have been sexually assaulted. And every time, that's what I hear is they felt uncomfortable but didn't know how to speak up. They didn't know how to say, "This is not okay." And here's the thing. You can tell your daughter if somebody touches you inappropriately, tell them. But if we're not teaching them how to set clear boundaries in these other minuscule experiences, then when it gets to that big one, they're not going to know how to say stop. They're not going to know how to say no because they're not doing it in all the other times.
Right. Can you share that example of you had a girl, I can't remember her age, but she was with her boyfriend and her grandmother was in the other room. And can you just talk about that? Because that would be a great scenario for a mom with an adolescent, or even before that. I mean, I don't know what the appropriate age exactly is. That's probably different for each family on when they think their child is mature enough to start a conversation. But unless you have statistics that show when it should be started, I'll let you talk more about that. But can you kind of talk about that scenario? Because that would be a really probably commonplace scenario that I would definitely want to talk with my two daughters about if they were heading over to a boy's house or a party.
Mm-hmm. So in regard to your comment about what age, the earlier you start, the more you empower your child. So a good example is when a child is really young and you're getting into that, talking about body parts and potty training, be conscious of the words that you use. Do you say pee-pee or wee-wee? Do you try to make it, and use those playful, fun words? Or do you use anatomy? This is a penis. This is a vagina. We're peeing, we're pooping. Are you using real words or are you using these fun, playful words? Now, here's why this is important. If you're teaching your child wee-wee and pee-pee and, these playful, fun words, consider this. Those are the same words that predators and pedophiles use to make the child feel comfortable that what they're doing is okay. So if you're using those words, you're actually messing with your child's brain in the ability for them to go, wait a minute, this isn't right. Because we have natural instincts. We know when something isn't right and isn't okay. But what we're taught conflicts with our instincts. And so if you're teaching them, this is a penis. And when we go potty, when we go pee, we don't have conversations with other people. So for example, if you have boys, and I have a lot of moms who have those 6 is kind of young, but 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old boys, and they want to go into the men's room. They don't want to go into the women's room with mom anymore. They're getting too old for that, right? But if they have a clear understanding of what's okay and what's not okay, when they're standing at the urinal and a man walks in and stands next to them and says, oh, hey, look what my pee-pee can do. They're going to go, that's not okay. That's a red flag. I need to get out of here now, or I need to let someone know that I'm not okay, that this is, because that's not appropriate.
Right.
But do they know that? Do your kids know that we don't chit chat? Teaching those simple things by just using anatomically correct words. So then how does that then progress into as your child gets older? So here's a story that I heard a young woman at a college share a few years back. And she was, and I don't remember if she was given the assignment or whatever, but one of the guys in her class had invited her to his house to study. And he lived with his grandmother. And she had no reason whatsoever to think that this should be a concern or something that she should say no to. So she went, and they're sitting there on the couch studying, and his grandmother's in the other room, and he starts like messing with her and wrestling and, kind of play fighting. And at first it was really just, nudges and things like that, and, kind of joking around with her and a little roughhousing. And she said that it felt weird, it felt uncomfortable, but she didn't think anything of it, and so she didn't say anything. Well, then it progressed and kind of got into, a little bit more aggressive, more physical contact. And again, she had all these confusing thoughts in her head. Like, okay, like, do I say something? And also, what if I say something? What's he going to think? She was more worried about what his feelings were than her own. And that's something that we're taught. Why? I don't know. But it shouldn't be that way. We need to understand that our feelings are just as important, if not more important, than other people, particularly when it comes to our comfort and our safety. And we need to connect those two. She continued to not say anything. He continued to kind of mess around with her, and she kind of laughed at it and maybe got into it a little bit to make it a little less awkward and uncomfortable. There was a boob brush and a leg rub, mixed in there. And she continued to not say something. Well, here's the reality of why boundaries are so critically important. Predators are testing. They're looking for a victim, somebody who's not going to speak up, someone who's not going to defend themselves, someone who is not going to draw attention. And he was testing her. And the more that she didn't speak up, the more that he continued, because he was, okay, well, if she'll let me do that, let's try this. Okay, she let me do that, let's try this. It got all the way that he raped her on the couch right there in the living room with his grandmother in the other room. Because she didn't know she had power within her, power of her voice to just say, that's not okay, or stop, or I don't want to do that. So yes, we can talk to our daughters the day before they leave for college and say, hey, if some guy touches you or you're at a party and someone offers you a drink, don't take it. But that's not going to register in their head because of all the other things that we've been taught, misinformation, that's going to direct them in the other way.
It's kind of a guise. It's kind of like that makes us feel good because we feel like we addressed the problem, but we didn't really empower the person.
Yes, exactly.
So there's like a little distinction on, we feel like we addressed it because we said something, and that makes us feel good as a parent, but it may not be, it sounds like it's not enough to actually empower them when they're in the situation, whether it's them or whether it's us talking to ourselves, so that we're not in a situation where we're not speaking up and letting people know what our boundaries are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's not something that you can teach, that you can, you just what you said, empowering. That's not something that you can give somebody in just a quick little, oh, hey, by the way, pay attention to your surroundings when you're out. Okay.
Right.
I mean, think about that. That's a habit that you have to create. And if you can instill that in your kids, I tell moms, because they're like, when I go to the grocery store, it's really hard to pay attention because I'm constantly paying attention to my child. If you've got young kids, empower them to be a second set of eyes for you. One of the things I suggest to moms is play a game. When you go to the grocery store, here's a really good activity to keep your kids busy is pick something, vegetables. So, okay, so here's what we're going to do today. Every time we see somebody with vegetables in their cart, let me know. So your kid is preoccupied focusing on, but you're teaching them to notice things. Or so let's count how many times we can see someone in the grocery store that has glasses on. Brilliant.
That is just brilliant. That is brilliant. Because awareness.
Yes, exactly.
Awareness is such a key in knowing your surroundings. Like I teach my kids when we leave a store that they're not, I don't look at my phone when I'm walking through a parking lot. Sometimes my kids will have a book with them, especially if we go to the hair salon and they had a book while they're waiting for their sibling to get their hair cut. I'm teaching them not to read, but to be aware, and to, as they're approaching the vehicle, is there anybody around our car? Is there anything under the car? I don't say person, but is there an animal under the car? Is there anything under the car or behind the car? And I'm just trying to get them to be aware, because I don't want to be approached in the parking lot. I have my keys ready. I have 2 little girls with me, and I want to be like, have my head on a swivel, basically. So that awareness is such a key component. And it sounds like the awareness, being assertive. It's not being aggressive. And a lot of people don't know the difference. You're not being aggressive, you're being assertive. You're speaking up and you're knowing your boundaries and communicating honestly what's important to you. And as we look at putting that all together, how does that help you when you're teaching a class, when people have already started to develop those things? And I imagine a lot of people who come into your class haven't developed them yet. But as they do develop those skills and you start to teach the self-defense, do you notice a change in how they're able to deliver the actual self-defense skills when they've worked on those other things that are more like emotional or psychological?
Yes, 100%. Because as I said in the very beginning, if you don't, those are the skills you need to work on. If you don't have those skills, it will impact your ability to physically defend yourself. Because, for example, striking someone in the face. Have you ever swatted at a bee?
Yes.
What happened?
The bee flew away.
Oh, you got lucky. You got lucky.
Sometimes they come back around swarming, though.
Exactly. Why? Because you swatted at it. So when you have to strike somebody, when you get to that point that you're physically defending yourself, listen, you're all in 100%. You are fully committed to physically defending yourself until you can get away. And that may take every bit of physical strength that you have. Are you going to be all in if you aren't sure if you can? If you're not, if you don't have the ability to pull that strength out from within you, are you really going to be able to? It's so intertwined. Your ability to, people ask me all the time, have you ever had to use your pepper spray? Have you ever had to physically defend yourself since learning physical defense, since starting to teach? And I say no. Why? Because of all these other aspects. I'm 100% confident that right now, if somebody came into this room, broke into my house, came into here, that I would be able to confidently defend myself. I have a plan. I have layers of options, no matter what the situation is. If one thing doesn't work, boom, 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 boom. I just go down the list. And I do it like that. I react because I've practiced and I've built what I call a fighter mindset. When a fighter goes into the ring, he has gone through this whole process of prepping himself. He just doesn't walk into the building, put his bag down, and jump into the ring. He's in the back, wrapping his hands, and his coach is cheering him on and getting him pumped up. He walks out. As he's walking to the ring, the music's pounding, the people are yelling, all this stuff. He gets out there, he's moving, he's all pumped up and ready, and they say, ding, the bell rings, and he goes out there, and he gets hit. Does he stop? Go, oh, wait a minute. No, I'm done. No, he stays in until the fight is over. And when you get to the point of physical defense, that's the mindset that you're going to need to have. So you need to prepare yourself for that kind of a situation. That worst case scenario, you're on the ground, the biggest person possible is on top of you and ready to kill you. You have to be able to think like that. And having all of these things, the confidence, the boundaries, the belief in yourself, knowing that you're worth fighting for, and then having that ability to be assertive so that you don't just swat at the person and, bop them in the nose. No, I tell people in my class, you strike that nose until you smash it into the face. You're busting the nose. You're not just poking them in the eyeball. You're gouging out eyes. And everyone goes, "Ee," and we do laugh about it, but I'm serious. Like, that's how you need to be able to think, to be able to physically defend yourself. I tell people, I go, we get to a point where the arm is in front of you, just like this, and in like a chokehold, and you've turned your head. I tell people, what do you see right there? And they're like, ooh, I see a good spot to bite. Perfect. But if you pass out at the sight of blood, may not be the best option for you. Find what I tell people is find what feels natural and comfortable for you, and then practice it until you can do it like that, because that's what you're going to need to be able to really do it physically.
Great. Well, Patti, this has been just a very, very empowering session, because you have given the ladies on this, or anybody who is listening, just some tools to learn self-confidence, to kind of change their behavior and their mindset, to have that fighter mindset that you talked about, and also be aware of some red flags in another person's behavior if they're making excuses, if they're defensive about you being defensive with them approaching you in a way you're not comfortable with, and then also if they're ignoring what you're saying when you're trying to set a boundary with them. I love the power of your voice and the confidence that you exude. I think I think you're so just spot on when you say you haven't been approached or haven't been in a situation since you learned these tools, because your demeanor changes when you have confidence.
Mm-hmm.
You become unapproachable when you have confidence. Like, there's something that emits from someone with confidence that, ooh, a predator or somebody who maybe would cross a boundary would say, I don't think I'm going to mess with that woman. And I think that's so important. It's so important to have that. So I appreciate you coming on and talking about kind of the highlights of what you do. Where can someone reach you at if they want even more information?
The best place is Facebook. I do have a business page on there, but I know this is backwards, but that's the website. It's pepperspraypatti.com. It is P-A-T-T-I. That link will take you to my Facebook page. I've tried having a website a few times, and every time it's everything that's on my Facebook page. Scroll through there, like it. I am continually posting tips, confidence building, inspiration, all kinds of good stuff, any specials that I have, any classes that I have coming up. Everything that I have put out there is on that page, and so that's where I recommend going. And I'm also on, I knew that I wanted to do this. I'm also on Amazon.com because I did publish a book. Not everyone can make it to my class, and I am working on putting a lot more classes online for those that aren't able to attend. But I did create a book. It's called Prepare, Protect, Practice, Action Steps for Women's Self-Defense by Patti Mason. And it has in there, it has my story, my experience. It talks about fear. Awareness. There's a special section for moms. There is a special section for college students. There's a whole chapter on how to use pepper spray properly, and why I think that this is a phenomenal tool that everyone should have in their arsenal. It's going to walk you through the A, B's, and C's of it. There's some more information and some other stuff out there. Just a really good thing to kind of get you starting that mindset.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I think you've just given people a lot of tools in their toolbox and a lot of conversational starters that they can have with young children all the way up to college age, and even amongst our peers and our own age. So I thank you very much. Ladies who have joined this, other people who have joined this, I just want to ask you to stay tuned. There'll be more podcast episodes coming forth. In the meantime, be bold, be beautiful, and be you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Stay safe, you guys.